So I want to talk to you in this video about what it means to be a black social worker. I want to talk to you about this comprehensively, and hopefully it makes sense. I've entitled it Lidentity. I stole that from somewhere, but let's go into it. And it's going to be a completely unedited video. I want to say that I, first of all, don't like using the race card. I don't like saying, it's racism. I'm not quick to call things racism. But I want to be clear. Whilst I'm not quick to use the race card, I recognize that racism exists in different forms. It is not a linear thing. There's different types, and there's types of racism, in my view, that are people's genuine ignorance. You might go to certain generations and they've grown up a certain way, they're still alive, they're probably in their 70s, 80s, or they might come from a certain part of the UK, and then they just have stereotypes in their heads about me. That is real, that happens. And the thing is, where I live now in London, I never have to think about the color of my skin where I live. It's so multicultural around here. I love it. And I love different cultures as well. But being a black social worker, it comes with a level of weight, and I'll explain more of that in a moment. The local authority I first worked in, let me tell you about my social work journey. So I started working in West London, and West London, where I worked, was reasonably diverse, and there was different types of demographics in different areas. Never have to worry about the color of my skin working in this part of town. Most of the staff there were black. All right, that's just the way it is. Brilliant set of people. I miss working there. Then I moved to a county outside of, just next door to London. All right, and that was obviously vastly different. Mostly white people, very few black families down there, but there were some, and then there were gypsy and traveller families, or traveller families, let's be clear. Very few black families I ever worked with down there, I think one. And then I've just left a job, a local authority, and I was working 200 miles away in a local authority. And you can imagine that is as remote as you can get. There are hardly any, if anything, there are no black people down there, and there's just one or two. I worked in the schools sometimes, and when I go to schools, the children would all be looking at me. Who am I? They don't see in face to face black people, right? And that's an interesting experience, because I felt uncomfortable for them. This is just how my brain works. They're children, that's fine. They're not used to that experience. And so every time I'd walk up to a school, I'd be thinking, what are they thinking? Yeah. So that was an interesting experience. And I looked forward to that experience. This is why I worked there, because I wanted to experience that. That was part of the reason why I worked there. However, the local authority that I had worked for, there was a report that was written about it. I think it was the Ofsted report. I'm not sure if it was Ofsted, but it was, I read through it really quickly, and it did say that there were systemically racist issues and challenges taking place still in that local authority. And so me and my team was diverse, interestingly, diverse in the sense that they were native whites or black South African social workers. I think that I was probably the only black British Caribbean social worker in that division of the local authority. I didn't see any others anyway in the local authority. Am I the same as them? Yes and no. As far as I'm concerned, we are all one people. Everybody's all one people, but there are differences, whites and typically white women. And there is a big difference and a big leap between a white woman and a black man and a black woman. And there are lots of issues in between, just with that alone. I recognized that. What was brilliant, because my team was brilliant. I loved working in my team, in just my small team. And my particular team was actually mostly black. But the other team, some of them were just completely white women or a few white men. we were happy, and the white women were happy to talk and ask questions about my experience and the black experience, because they weren't exposed to it. But what was beautiful about that was that they were happy to have the conversation and listen. Yeah. So sometimes I'd be walking through town, or I'd be in a cafe for lunch. And again, it's not often people see someone my color walking through town, but I never had a problem with anybody. Nobody ever said anything to me, or, you know, and the thing is, remember, this is playing in my head. This is playing in the back of my head. What was Curtis's experience? What are you thinking in your head as you're walking through town? And I'm thinking that everyone's looking at me. And you know what? A lot of people were. But I expect that. That's fine. I remember I was working with a parent. She was under 24-hour supervision in hospital, and she was asked a question. All right, and there is no critique of the parent at all. She was being supervised by another professional, and when I turned up to the hospital, I asked her, "Have you eaten?" She said, "Yeah, I've eaten." But the member of staff that was there before this member of staff, he had smelly food. It was a really strong smell, and it turns out it was dried fish. Now, in my opinion, if you've got that level of strong smelling food, you should be conscious of people around you, right? Because it's a strong smell. In a hospital, it's a really pungent smell. But she said she dealt with it. This is a white girl, by the way, a white woman. And then the member of staff said, "Black people eat weird food." So what's in my head? I'll come back to what I was thinking. So the mum looked at her and said, "Why did you say that?" She said, they eat weird food." And I was thinking, why would you say that in front of a mother? You're a professional. She said it again. She said it about 3-4 times, right? So I'm thinking, how should I deal with this? Now, I'm on a schedule. I've got things to do. I've got to work with this family. We're moving the family. Shall I have this argument or not? And I said to her, I wouldn't say that the word is weird. She goes, "No, the word's weird." And I said to her, "Do you think that's okay to use the word weird?" She goes, "Because it is. I can say it because I'm married to a Nigerian." So she's Welsh, but she's married to a Nigerian man. And she says, "I cook all their food, but their food is still weird. I cook it really well. I've learned how to cook it, but it's weird." Now, that was the only incidence of something that troubled me, but I didn't have the opportunity to deal with it. But I know it made the parent who I'm working with uncomfortable, saying that. What's in my head? I wanted to deal with that. I was upset. I wanted to come down on it. But that's the thing. When I'm listening to the world, being in, and believe me, where I worked, it's a completely different world from where I live. It's actually a different world. Okay, there's just so many gaps in the UK's experience because of where people live, and it's only 200 miles away, but it's a different world. And so when I'm down there, I'm overthinking. What are people thinking of me as I walk through the towns, and when I walk through the schools, and when I walk in the office? The question is, what are they thinking of me? That is a narrative that plays in my head, okay? It's not just me. But the question is does the African experience, the Black African experience, resonate with the Black Caribbean experience? Is it the same? That's a discussion that's to be had. But I would say we're not. I never had a problem working with any of the families down in the remote countries, but I know that racism exists. I recognize that some people just can't help themselves because of where they've come from and how they're programmed. And I recognize that some people and I also recognize that some people have capacity to learn, but are just not in that space of learning. And so I have to ask myself, how much nonsense am I willing to take? How much discrimination or stereotypical statements am I willing to take before I get upset? And am I allowed to get upset? I've worked with families, and even recently, where I've given them better, how can I put it? I've worked with them really well, but because I'm not saying what they want me to say, they said I was a bully. And I always wondered, what do you mean by this? So I actually had to have a meeting about it with them and others present, other professionals present, to address that issue. Why do you think I'm a bully when other people have been really quite harsh with you, but I haven't? What does that mean? Maybe you're using the wrong words. Maybe it's my tone of voice. Maybe it's my, big word, vernacular. Maybe it's my accent. I'm not sure. Is it my height? Is it my beard? Is it this bean head of mine? You know what I mean? What is it? What is it that's making you feel that way? And they said they don't know. They just feel bullied by me, right? And I said to them, but you do know that other people have been very strong with you and I have not. So I want you to tell me how I can make this easier for you. Just let me know and we'll work on that. And they couldn't do it. Now, what's in my head is, what else could it be? I want you to understand that social services, is the vast majority of it is white women, okay? And I'll do a video on this topic about the power of a white woman's voice. But for me, I recognized that there was nothing I could do and I had to draw a conclusion. But am I entitled to now pull the race card and say, it's the color of my skin and the depth of my voice? Is it that? It's got to be that, right? That's what's in my head. And am I entitled to think that? Believe me, please watch the previous video that I've put up. I addressed this in a bit more detail, but I have to think about these things constantly to make my job easier. But I can't stop thinking about them. Now, do I feel inferior as a person? No, absolutely not. But I'm also always thinking that some people just haven't been exposed to where I live. It's something they've only seen on the TV, and what they see on the TV is full of stereotypes, which causes them to have prejudice and enact their discrimination. They didn't know why I made them feel comfortable. This is not the first family that said that to me. What can I do to make you feel more comfortable? I don't know. You don't look like a social worker. Now, guys, I don't dress like this quite, but I do dress casual, just like everybody else. But you don't look like a social worker. I would say, what do you think I should look like? And is there a way that I can dress to make you feel more comfortable? You understand where I'm going with this? The issue here is not so much that they're saying it, but what am I playing in my head? And I'm actually saying to you that minorities have an extra bag to carry in life. So if life is rough, life is tough, we cannot put this bag down. It's strapped to us. Just like the skin on my hand, the skin on my face, I can't get rid of it. We walk with a number of programs, 2 different languages, and other bits and bobs playing in the background, whilst we turn up to be professional. That's what I really wanted to say. It's a wider conversation. This is a long video, but I want you to take this conversation to help develop your practice. Don't worry about me. Look at your colleagues, and if there's anything I can say to, just like my mentor, Eddie Hippolyte, I've had a very powerful interview with him some months back. Be brave enough to ask questions. White social workers, if you want to understand, just ask. Black people are not asking for you to step down so that we can step up. We don't want tokenism. We just want equity of treatment. We want to engage in fixing the problem. And that problem is not talking about the problem. Hope this helps you understand things.